Where is this shit? Cool. So let's see now. So we should be live now. Good evening or good morning, PJ.
Good afternoon, wherever you are.
Morning time. Yeah, just haven't. So we're gonna start today. We have a special guest, a friend of us, PJ. PJ is the co-founder and the executive creative director of Laundry. But before we get into that, we're gonna play the show reel so you guys can know a little bit more. If you don't know Laundry, you should know. Give me 1 second. We do that every month, but we always forget how to do share screen. Yeah, sound, Google, cool. Everyone should be seeing this. So really nice, man.
I feel like we should work on our dancing game. You know, like Zoom dancing.
That's secretly what we do. Is we just make things dance. Like the motion graphics and live action is just the second fiddle.
So PJ, before we start, can you introduce yourself, man? Because I think I have a lot of things me and James want to touch base with you, but just for everyone that doesn't really know Laundry or doesn't know you, can you introduce you and Laundry? Just tell a little bit of what you guys do.
Yeah, definitely. My name is PJ Richardson. I'm the ECD and co-founder, director, and digital artist at Laundry, and we're a motion graphics and design and animation and live action studio in LA and San Francisco and New York. We've been around about just under 18 years. Working mostly on stuff stateside. Started off as two dudes in a room doing motion graphics, turned into live action, and motion graphics turned into kind of everything, and just kept it sort of lean and mean and sort of efficient and creative, and just kind of kept growing as the market and world demanded of us too. And luckily we've been not too reckless to get this far, so pretty happy about that. We work on everything from commercials and branding stuff to music videos and film titles a little bit, to all that sort of in between stuff we all work on that we don't even know what it is, but it's in motion. So and I think mainly our you can see in the reel, I think what makes us our sort of unique position is the sort of more graphic, colorful, sort of happy, and as we noticed, dancing vibes to our work. So yeah, that's kind of what we do.
That's nice. 18 years, man. 18 years is like, so you legally grow up now, no? So
yeah, like our company can legally vote.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
I can't believe it's been so long. It feels like, I don't know. I feel really old for like remembering. Like I remember, like when just after you guys started, I think your work was posted on like Motionography in like 2000. Well, it would have been Tween, I think, in like 2006 or something, around that era. I think something like that. Just makes me feel old.
I know it flies by. Like some days you're like, oh man, this feels like it's never going to end, and some days you're like, where did 5 years go, or even more.
am I still cool? Am I still hip?
Yeah, I mean,
Was I ever?
You know what's kind of funny is that this comes up a lot actually, where like it's really strange. Like the tools have definitely evolved in renderers and and new tools and this kind of a thing. But like it's sort of hilarious that like at a basic level, it's still After Effects, it's still Cinema 4D, it's still Maya. It ends up in completely different contexts, but there is a root of it that's still exactly the same, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's nice. And man, but also, a part of you just running, not just running the studio, but you go crazy. I don't know anyone like in our industry, like our age, then produce as much work as you produce. You constantly, try new things. You constantly posting and design things always, man. And I don't know, for me it's a big inspiration to see, because having kids and getting older, we slow down a little bit, but you constantly, every day, if I open my Instagram account, PJ is posting a new artwork he did. How how you get that motivation to do that nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, most days it's kind of art therapy from like the stresses of the studio, but then it's also still like the enthusiasm of just wanting to make stuff. And then also just sort of I think technology keeps evolving so quickly. It's also like kind of an exercise to stay close to it, to learn all like the nuances of different things, to be able to like speak to it with our team or our clients a little bit more specifically. So it's kind of a combination of a bunch of different things. So yeah, I mean, it's like all of us, like most days you're like, oh, this is garbage, this sucks, but I'm going to post it anyways and just go on to the next thing. And then you look back and you're like, oh, that didn't suck that bad, I guess. I don't know. Like, but it's kind of just this like mindset of just embracing the process and not really worrying about the result and trying to stay close to it.
So
yeah, that's quite nice, because I think a lot of artists, we always worry about how things look and never post. You end up not doing things because you always worry and you're never doing anything. And the way you think is always nice, because you just produce and doesn't matter, the final result. But it's the journey you do, what you're learning with that, than more than the final result.
Yeah, and I think there's I mean, look, we all were able to do this a little bit, well, not necessarily better, but more energetically when we were younger, because we had more energy, right? But like now that we're older, we also have wisdom too, I think, to a degree, at least. It's kind of hard not to, doing this for a while. And so it's just sort of like, all right, like let's combine those and just make shit and see what happens. And again, to that end, it's like, you're right. Like for anybody, because people ask me about it all the time, like, oh, I don't know, it sucks, it doesn't suck, like whatever. And it's like, yeah, dude, it doesn't matter. Like everybody, I have people tell me things could do this or be better, do that. People say they like it. Like it's so all over the range, and then you realize like everybody has a different opinion. So just make shit.
It's true.
It's almost like, I always like make the metaphor of it's sort of like a butcher. Like if they're sharpening their knives, they'll be ready for when the real job comes, because they're always practicing. But if they don't, and then they cut a crappy piece of meat, then their butcher is not a good butcher anymore. Like it's like it's just really about practice more than anything.
So
that's nice.
Going back to you when 18 years ago when you started the company, what was your background before you started, and what made you start the studio?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my very first job was with a partner that's now at Pentagram doing print design stuff, and I very quickly realized that I just wasn't that good at it, and I wasn't really a cultural fit for their tone, even though they're spectacular. But I did love motion graphics. I went to work at a company called Fuel here in LA that was kind of more like sports action branding, motion graphics stuff early on, and then worked at another studio called Stardust, which is now Louis York. And it was like it was kind of there's been a lot of heydays, but it was a heyday in that time where it was just like complete insanity, just raw creativity, but it was kind of exhausting. And I was like, oh, we can do this better. We can do this more efficiently, and it'll be way less stressful to be our own boss, which was about the biggest vision in the human history. But and that's when we started laundry in like 2000, late 2005, 2006.
That's cool. Yeah, it's a long time because it's that time was kind of, I don't know, was a little bit of the beginning as well, no? Because we still just only few studios as old you guys going, it doesn't have many studio going from that time.
It's interesting,
anymore.
you mentioned like Stardust and what have you. So you had like, Stardust, Superfad, and there's loads of people who just. I know Stardust are now Lost York, but just aren't really around anymore. So it's good to see that longevity as well.
Yeah, I know, and it's. I mean, knock on wood that we get to keep going. Like it's an honor, honestly. Like I don't know what makes or breaks it. And my only best guess is really just that like the studios that seem to keep going for the most part stay really proactive, and that's what we try to do as well. Is like try to question the work, not that in a way that's like that it's bad, but like just kind of evolving with the times and hopefully even ahead of it. And it's really hard to do, but I think putting art side of it first kind of helps keep things going. You sort of see it in the best of them, and I'm not saying we are. I kind of more look up to them, but you see like the Bucks or the Man vs. Machines of the world that just keep experimenting, and at the same time they stay top of mind too.
Do you think, because we already discussed that before, me and you, but it's something when I look laundry website, when I look you guys work, even watching the showreel, that reminds me a lot what we do at Cookie. We don't really have a style, we like experiment, we like doing different things, but I think this is kind of an old school thing because we don't see new studios coming and doing. They normally focus in one, specialize one thing. For me, I don't know if I could do only one thing in my life. I probably would be bored. I'm thinking after 6 months. But do you see that as an advantage, or do you see that as a problem nowadays? Because in the same way, you can offer more, but you need to keep more generalistic, more people under your hood than can produce their work. It's always more stressful when you pitch, because when it's one style, you have a team dedicated only on that, and you can just go for it. But when it's different, and when you want to pitch different ideas, that's involve different artists, different styles. How do you feel that nowadays?
I'm right there with you. I mean, we do all kinds of different things, but I agree that we were just having this conversation this morning. It's a lot harder. I think there's an element that lets you be more flexible depending on different markets and different behaviors of the market we're in over time. But yeah, I think it definitely feels like more than ever clients or brands want to put you in a box, or I don't mean that as negative as it sounds. Like it's like I think they want the confidence of a specific studio brand, quote unquote, and that they know what they're getting. Like I don't know, like a feature deluxe thing, or even like, I mean, Buck's kind of the easiest. They have gotten huge and do all kinds of things now, but pick sort of a few lanes, and I think there's a degree of expertise and also trust that's because you kind of know what you're getting a little bit. And it has to be exquisite, of course, that's without saying, but yeah, to your answer, I think that, I mean, we've gotten this far and have constantly grown, but it's so much harder, it feels like, because you can kind of prove yourself and do the creative to prove that you can do that one thing when they're probably calling 2 or 3 other specialists that own that,
So do you think in that regard, do you think it's more difficult nowadays, now that there are more studios around and it's easier to get the work out than it was, say, like 10, 15 years ago?
So I think it seemed like it. I think the pandemic did a funny thing where, with live action shutting down, at least here, they're like animation for everybody, and you're like, great, for this rocks. But then I think there's a side of it where like brands and clients got really comfortable working with studios everywhere. So like you'll get a studio in whatever, South Africa or something, that can do the same pitch for half or a quarter of the price, and it's just like, man, like that's tricky. So it really, I think it becomes about more than ever about the studio's personal brand and selling that so that people want to work with that, even if they could do it themselves or somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Actually, I was thinking about it the other day in regards to location and like rate cards. So I'm kind of wondering, like, you know, if down the line, will all the rate cards just become very similar price, whereas you know, previously or currently it's very much geographically based. You know, like you were saying, a rate card in South Africa would be cheaper than a rate card in LA or what have you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it won't, just because the cost of living in like in LA is higher, and we get away with having a foot in on a lot more because of our proximity here, right? But like, yeah, I think even though they're perfectly able and sometimes a lot better, a studio in Argentina is just a tougher sell, even though they will go there. But they also know, like, oh, I mean, look, and we've seen it nonstop ourselves as artists and as studios. There's kind of this not always, but often this underlying insecurity to be afraid to charge too much. So everybody's gonna try to come in under on a lot of stuff, which, you know, I think will make it trickier or make it a lot harder, and maybe not never have. Right?
I think it's still like you're talking about the subject about like clients going to specific, but I think our industry, even if you wanted that hot studio to do something or that hot artist, is no guarantee you're gonna get delivery. I think we still
need a track record.
Live in a time it's about relationship, it's about trust more than, because we're going back to that, like you said, you can get hot artists anywhere in the world, but a guy, let's say in Philippines, what guarantee me he gonna deliver? I can't just go and have him in the studio to get that. And if he doesn't deliver, you fuck with your clients. So I think client is still on that, on trust, you know.
Oh, always. Like there's an unnamed very big visual effects house company that wins a lot based entirely on that. And it's, you know, it's not always the smoothest, but clients keep going back because there's trust.
Yeah, it's all the trust. And even like the guys, you talk about Argentina, the guys from two events we had done before, and we're talking about budgets and everything, and they said, yeah, we got a lot of work, we just work to America, but they call us when they don't want to pay the US office, you know. So I think, you know, you still have all the talent studios around the world, but I think it's still quite geographical in somehow, you know.
I agree.
For clients, I think it's still really geographical, and I'm gonna touch base on that after. But it's the reason why you guys open in New York. You know, you don't need to have an office in other place if you know, it's all open like that. But you know that to be in New York, it's really important for the clients in New York.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like anything, you just want to make it easy on people. Like you want to make it like, hey, yes, you could do this all online with someone in, you know, anywhere, studio anywhere, but like, we're down the street, like, let's come over, let's talk about it, like, or not, but just the comfort of knowing we're just down the street, I think makes a big difference. I also think, I mean, it's not always this way, but we notice too, like with the leads and the boards, that we see that the style work is kind of nuanced to the location a little bit, or it can be like, there's not a one New York style different from anybody else, but there's the type of work we see there is a little bit different, and so you want to work with a team with artists locally that do that, similar to, I think, London too. I can, you know, there's not always, but you can kind of see a certain, I don't know, sophistication to a lot of the work that's pretty
not
special.
what I do.
Yeah. Maybe not up north.
But yeah, I know what you mean though. Everything's got like a slight edge to that location in some way.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, so it's, I don't know. I do wish there was one like button that sort of explained it all, but it seems like it's always constantly like just different ingredients.
Yeah, it is. I think it is. And as we talk, so I'm gonna talk on the subject. You know, we it's 2023. You know, it's fucking June. we mid of the year. It's been, I think you can agree with me, and talking to a lot of studios, it's been a really tough year for the industry. You know, we're seeing all the techs, you know, like just pulling jobs out, you know, like Facebook. A lot of studios, I heard, you know, lay off a lot of people. You know, I'm talking about studios, not even Disney and TV channels. And also, you guys just opened New York, you know, in the middle of one. To be honest, I'm 24 years in the industry. I think this has been the worst recession I saw in these 24 years. Even 2008 was nothing compared to this. And for me, it's like we spoke about, you know, but you guys just opened New York, and I said, fuck, PJ, how, you know? So how do you feel, man? Tell us a little bit about it.
yeah, a little nervous. I think, yeah, we're a little bit nervous, but on the other hand, I think there's we're a larger studio, but in a way, we're small mini studios, mini pods in different cities, and I think being able to be small and nimble out there in a way can be pretty advantageous, but have sort of our bigger studio name, and we have a pretty great team out there for chasing down projects. So it's really trying to support them in person there in a nimble way, and so that's the what we're kind of attempting to see if that can work. I think in a way too, I think it kind of comes back to a little bit of a psychology game where we're like, hey, we're doing great work, better than ever. A lot of studios, rightfully, because of what you just said, are kind of on their heels and in defense, but that's also not sometimes attractive to clients. They're like, hey, we want people that are stoked and pumped, and so we can get a small team out there to help, like, kind of do great work and be sort of in it and enthusiastic. Where that's kind of the experiment, I think.
So was the studio in New York, has that been on the card? Has that been planned for a while? Like,
yeah, we've been thinking about it for a couple of years, and we do a lot of work out there on the East Coast, and so we're like, all right, now let's give this a shot, and see what could kind of happen. And there's just such great artists and collaborators out there that we wanted to work with on a more permanent basis, and kind of all that. So it's really exciting. And at Stardust had set up a New York studio out there, or been part of it when it set up earlier, and it was always just such a good vibe.
I do like that New York vibe. Whenever I've visited studios in New York, it just feels there's like a certain like electricity in the air. I don't know quite what it is.
Yeah, it felt like I actually felt that same sort of vibe when I was with you guys in London in December too, where you're just like, it's just kind of like everybody's like really direct but enthusiastic, and it's kind of easy to see people and get around and just
infectious.
Kind of, you can kind of really get into a flow really nicely there. So it's cool.
Yeah, just be careful. Don't put stickers on the street in New York.
I heard someone that might have gotten in trouble with the law at some point in the past.
Yeah, you and your peanut butter jelly sandwich as a pillow.
Just be careful. But man, yeah, New York, and it's I don't know, even recession, you know, is give you a little bit more of the area as well for you expanding there. You know? Even if it's hard everywhere, but at least if you can get a little bit in other places as well, that helps quite a lot. No? And I don't know. For me, I think talking to the other studios and everything, because it's been really scary in the sense, like, you know, like even the top freelancers we normally trying to hire in London or like in the globe, and they always busy, and they suddenly send an email to you and you say, fuck, it's not, you know, only us. But it seems like things is picking up again. I think touch it wood, you know, always gonna get better. But it's amazing. I think it's really brave to see you guys just, you know, exploring the other corner of the US, you know, just in the middle of the recession. But I think it's it's amazing. But it's not something you just did, you know, you planned that before as well.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, and I'm kind of more of like a offense than a defense way of operating, but it's like one way or another, we're going to have to do the work. And luckily I really like it doing the work. So it's like, let's be proactive and create demand basically, and just have fun doing it too. And because I think it's a really weird thing. I know it doesn't seem like it because we all stress, but it seems like stress is sort of the enemy of creativity sometimes. And so it's like to let ourselves get stuck in that too deep, where it's just like, all right, it's always going to be hard, but let's just be proactive, make stuff, try experiments in different places and see what happens. Like, why not?
I think with any any global event or downturn, like at the moment, it creates opportunities. As to how they manifest is different, or how you find them, I don't know. It's up to the individual, but there's opportunities here. And by setting up a studio early enough in New York, it means you can reap the benefits as the economy rebounds, next year, for example. So I think that puts you in a good position.
That's the thing of it too. I think that it with anything like that, I think there's optics that are misconceiving when you're like, oh, you're opening a studio. It's not a studio of like 30 people. Like, it's, you know what I mean? It's at all. It's like other studios that you start small and you just build. I mean, you can do something really big, but that would be stressful.
The other thing with the like Thiago hit on it earlier about loads of companies, like quite a few companies, like laying off staff. It's like, I think a lot of companies overexpanded when the pandemic happened, with all the extra animation work. And as that kind of like dwindled a little bit later on, then it's inevitable that you have to lay off and downsize a little bit. So I feel
I think so, but I think maybe it's a good thing in this. Like, I mean, it's not good if people lose their jobs or close their studio for anybody. But like, I know with us, like, it is a lot harder to keep the quality of work up at a larger scale with more people than if you even if you have multiple studios. But it's I mean, luckily I haven't had to lay anybody off at all, and I'm so grateful for that.
That's amazing.
If you do have to work with a smaller team, I can see how an optimistic angle on that, where it's like, okay, we can focus on the quality of work a little easier.
More lean.
So I don't know. But again, I don't have to sit in that chair at this moment, so it's easy for me to say, probably unrealistically.
Speaking of like quality, how do you keep the quality consistent, not just in like the LA studio, but obviously San Fran and now New York? Like, how do you keep it consistent across the board?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's where the pandemic really, it's in a surprising way, kind of helped, because doing things remotely you get a lot more focus, but it's so much harder communication wise. So like, for instance, on most of our projects, we switched to twice a day check-ins on Zoom with the team on that project. So it's a lot of Zoom calls, but like really being hyper frequent about communication and check-ins. And then also like our creative brief decks got a lot more specific too, like, as opposed to like, hey, here's a client brief, let's talk about it. Like, we make these like pretty elaborate decks of like, this is the goal, this is the ask, this is the reference, this is what we need. Like, so I guess those are both long ways of just saying specificity frequently was kind of a way to manage a lot of that.
If was it Apple Vision Pro, if that takes off, you're going to have loads of augmented reality people and like sat around you.
Oh, I know. So we had an agency friend of ours did that with the Oculus Quest with his like remote teams, and like,
oh wow,
like did it all through there. And you're like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I get it. That's pretty clever, but the graphics are a little ghetto.
Yeah, it's I can imagine it's quite hard because like for your time and like the creative's time, where it takes a lot more on the communication now, and I think how you process the feedback nowadays is pretty, just like as you said, is a lot more giving details where you guys going and everything, for everyone working on the project, especially with big projects. It's quite hard to get all the team.
Yeah, and I think, and the tricky part is that it's like you you don't want to micromanage because you want to find the creative surprises, right? But on the other hand, somehow with it being remote, you kind of can't be as open-ended with it, because it's like, if you're, and not because anybody is doing an ounce of anything wrong, but if an artist is working for 8 hours and we're not sort of there to vibe out and kind of have those little micro conversations about feedback and ideas, you get to the end, you're like, oh, that's a completely wrong direction. We lost a whole day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's no one did anything wrong. Again, it's just the lack of the separation. So it's just like being a lot more specific, and then being like, okay, let's go, 3% to the left or right and see what happens, seems to be kind of our new model, at least for the moment. But it's also the way our projects are set up. Like I know I have friends at other studios that weave in or schedule in more of just R&D and experimental time up front, and then kind of assemble from that, which is it's a different way of going about it.
So with regards to your projects and the other locations, do you do the other studios do you all kind of collaborate for a creative, or is it like this creative goes to LA, this creative goes to New York, or is it just all in one basket?
It's pretty universal, like across we have an ECD in Austin, and then we have an artist in Iceland actually, but a lot of our teams on the West Coast and or in the East Coast. So, but it all just kind of mixes up. The only times that we are LA specific is if it's or studio specific is if there's a relationship or that's up in that particular region, or they want to come sit in house. We have like high security projects that we do in LA because we have to do them in a physical, like locked off location. But that's
security.
Yeah, but mainly it's kind of just pretty open, and just depending on what the bandwidth really.
So how do you deal with the time zone aspect if you've got obviously got quite a spread of time zones there? Is it more LA centric and people work around that, or how's that work out?
It depends on the person. Like we work with artists in UK and Ireland that they're like, I'll work on LA time. You're like, oh man, really? All right. But then there's artists who will we'll work their hours and just be very specific. We'll do like a check-in at the end of the day or early in the morning, or notes, or for my up stuff or whatever, that's to kind of accommodate that.
But also helps you a little bit, because I don't know, like when we work with Brazil quite a lot with the studio, that helps because we finish like 4 hours earlier. So even we can give feedback to everyone and they can carry on. We get in the morning, we have things to see. The only annoying part is, and that the team here can pick up whatever we are, So I think, I don't know, imagine for you guys, the difference between New York and LA is massive. So feels probably similar, no?
It is. It's not very problematic at all. And that's exactly right. You're like, all right, you're going to jam on that while I'm asleep. Or like if they're we have an artist in New York that's working on some illustrations, animations, and she gets pretty far by the time we wake up. So we're like, oh yeah, there's stuff to talk about. Cool. And it kind of gives her space too, because definitely it's like Slack is really good, but it's also really bad. Like the feedback I've gotten is artists feel like they need to they're under pressure to deliver like every 5 or 10 minutes. It's like, no, go work, go jam, and then we'll talk about it. And not do like creative directions over Slack. Which is kind of tricky. I noticed the time difference really doesn't make a difference going even all the way to Europe. Like it's like, oh yeah, we work with that, but man, the like going the other way, going towards Asia, it's tricky. It's like just past the opposite of our time zone, where you're like, all right, I can talk to you at about 4 p.m, and that's my window.
That's the hard for meetings.
It's just far, and it sucks because there's so many good collaborators out there.
PJ, let me ask you something. Some people probably don't know, but PJ does a lot of NFTs as well.
Oh yeah.
So he's on the world of NFT. So how you been doing on that, man? Because you've been doing since the beginning, and no one is talking much about NFTs anymore, but I can see just launch a new project on the NFT. So how are you doing on that? It's still going.
Yeah, a little slowly. NFTs seem to be pretty slow at the moment. But I figure I just started putting them up there and kept putting them. At first, it was going really good when it started off, and then for a couple of years, and then now it's really slow. But I figure I might as well put my art up there since I already did before, in case, so that no one else does. Because definitely I did an NFT project where on OpenSea someone duplicated the project and then sold their own versions of it. And you're like, man, really?
Yeah.
So, and I post so much that I'm like, I mean, not that my art's special or worth anything, but it's sort of like, oh, I might as well just have it up there. You know what I mean? But I still think it's interesting. It's sort of a mix. It's a tricky experience with NFTs, like, because it's the one. It's really cool that you can make art and get paid for it. And I think the one tricky thing though is just not buying into what people decide the value of your art is. Like, because that's really mentally taxing, where you're like, okay, that gift sold for $300,000 and this beautiful piece sold for $5. What the fuck? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, it's true.
I think there's a place for it, but I don't know. I don't think it's in its final form yet. And I think that's the
I agree
problem.
with you.
I think the other issue was there was so many just really shitty projects just taking over everything. Like those fucking obviously the apes that sold for fortune, even though it's terrible artwork and nothing of particular value.
Well, you don't like the apes? It's amazing.
But
you're right. I mean, it's a marketing game. Like, I have a friend that
it's not about the art.
No.
It should be, and it should be.
I know several people that do, like, I mean, I'm not discounting it as much as it probably sounds, but like they basically post themed AI art as NFTs and do quite well with it because they're really, really good at marketing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
yeah,
and they're consistent more than anything. I think that's kind of the secret ingredient to NFTs is just the consistency of staying in it.
One of the things I did like about it when it was more when it was quite popular is I like the idea that you can support an artist that you like, and theoretically you could have supported their income so they could carry on doing what they really enjoy. Obviously that's way more difficult now, but I like that aspect of it.
That was my favorite thing in the world, to see these other artists that I admired forever that like might have been a little too, whatever you want to say, dark, subversive, whatever, for commercial advertising, that just crushed it with NFTs and sales. And like that's awesome. Like, it's just cool.
And how that works for you as a studio, because it's two different philosophy, like when an NFT kicks on, like all the talent start saying, oh no, I'm not gonna do freelance work anymore for that price, I'm gonna just start NFT. As for a studio point of view, that's quite hard as well, no? Because in the beginning I remember like a lot of people we used to work with and they just stopped to start just doing NFT because they were making a lot more money, and suddenly we said, well, if we go in that direction, it's going to be really hard for studios, and you're kind of playing on the two sides, because you are the studio, but at the same time you're doing your NFTs. Do you still think that happen much?
Not as much, mainly because a friend in finance told me at the very beginning, he's like, look, with Bitcoin and Ethereum and NFTs as consequence, like it's a really, really, really up and down game. Like when you deal with currency, like it, especially early on, it's really spiky. So it may seem like it's all the rage right now, but usually it kind of tapers out. And that's kind of what happened. And we had a lot of artists we want to work with that are like, no, I do NFTs at the start, but then now obviously they're not selling as much because it's pretty oversaturated and the currency values have come down pretty heavily from where they were. So it doesn't come up quite as much anymore, but still some. I mean, there's certain artists that kind of just made the jump to like the fine art world because of NFTs, even if they're not selling as many now. And so we're not working maybe with some of those as much, but it hasn't been a huge, sort of problem or obstacle.
It was crazy to see how big is it Murat Pak became.
Yeah.
Like we used to work with him back in the early days of when I used to freelance at Found, and his projects him. He's a really nice guy, but and then obviously see him sell crazy stuff for an absolute fortune, and I do quite like his mystique aspect of his work.
Yeah, he made over 350 million.
Really? Not bad.
I was talking to Chris, runs a box of toys, because he did a project, I think 2010. I did a collaboration for Resonance. Each director did one project, and he was involved on that, and we did a premiere. And he removed his whole image from the web, so no one knows how he looks like.
we did a drum and bass video with him years ago. He was a part of that. Found, who was it? Australian drum and bass act. I can't remember now. Anyway,
it's really crazy to think. But yeah, I think people in the beginning managed to do.
Oh, Pendulum! It was Pendulum. That was it.
Wow! Nice.
Pendulum.
That's cool. That's cool.
I'm gonna throw a question back to you guys. What about how the elephant in the room, AI? Like, what's it looking like?
I don't know. AI is a big thing at the moment. I don't know. Business-wise, are you getting any agencies asking? Because we start getting agency not really asking us to do the work, but asking if we producing anything, we're doing tests and anything. I had about a month ago, I did a presentation for one agency as well, showing what we've been doing here. I don't know. My perspective on that's just a tool that we need to embrace, and
I think it's a tool to be
a lot different. Yeah, it's
not going away, is it? I mean, the Pandora box has been opened. And
also, it's not one thing that does everything. There is so many tools, and using. We like in the studio. We're gonna launch tomorrow a Pride video. We did on the social. We did some cell animation. We did and then we use the AI for creating styles for us and change this time between character animation with cell animation. I think for the artistic side, I can see working. It's still quite hard commercial wise, and but. How his client,
I feel like it's
never really know.
I feel like it's going to take away a lot of like low end jobs that
like music video is amazing. For music video you can pitch that, you create that really if you have the artistic license to produce. But I don't know what are you thinking. Is you guys producing
I'm definitely
anything?
in Adobe Firefly adding dolphins and kittens to all my family photos now. So and I'm really happy that.
I think it's great for family requests, isn't it? Like, oh, can you make this for my daughter's whatever? Like, yeah, sure, done.
Oh yeah, we can make book club logos. It's game over. Like
I think the best example I saw for Adobe Firefly is someone got like just a close up of a scene. Just cut a little bit of a porno scene and go Adobe Firefly to expand the scene and see what he was going to do. I send you after. It's just brilliant, It's brilliant. It has this.
That'll do it.
Just to see.
That reminds
me.
This
girl suddenly with two guys looking, but they just cut two guys looking down on the girl, and they start expanding, and suddenly she's eating a salad. There is a table. The guys is it. It's brilliant. The result, and it's a girl commenting as well. So that's really good. I will send you after.
There was an article in the BBC yesterday about basically about a group of people who were arrested because they were making very, very questionable images in AI, and they were arrested them because one thing I wondered about, if you make a dodgy image, but then it's not of a real person or anything, then where does it lie legally? But I think the conclusion they came to was because it still shows a really bad intent. So obviously it's if you make a dodgy image and it's still illegal, which I found really quite interesting actually.
Yeah, that is a nuance that I wouldn't have expected, but I think that makes sense, and you can see how you get there.
Yeah,
I've definitely had friends that made like politicians as like Darth Vader and like stormtroopers and stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, like that's or obviously the one on the news was the Trump getting arrested thing here with
well, actually, I guess another thing it might lead to, like you're saying, like your friend made stuff with stormtroopers. I wonder, obviously Disney owned the rights to Star Wars. Is it like an artist situation where if you make something, it's yours, even if it's based on someone else's copyright?
I have no idea. That's the $1 million question, because I was at I went to a trip up in Seattle to meet with agencies last week, and AI they all asked about it. Like all the creatives use it for concepting and Midjourney for their projects and what have you, which was like, okay, that's cool. Cat's under the bag. But the question, particularly from the producers, was exactly that. Like where's the line for the rights? To not get really just not get sued. Like it wasn't like, fortunately it wasn't a moral question, it was more a financial one. But I don't really know. I mean, I think it's kind of the Midjourney one that's the tricky one, but where I sort of land on it is if it looks like something that has copyright, you're probably in trouble. But if it's just like a general style, like
if you put like just include the prompt, "Don't get me sued," and it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, truly, like I think that's the thing. Like, they'll come after it. Like they did with NFTs. Like Disney went in and was like, no, Mickey Mouses. I don't care what your project is. So which I guess I get.
Yeah, because I'm seeing like I have a friend on Asians, and we were talking a couple months ago, and they start using that, because the rights to pay, for photography, like for kids and things like that, they can produce everything Midjourney, like with no cost. So that's a little bit scary, I think, at the moment.
That's the challenge. Like we haven't seen it come up in like commercial projects directly, like, okay, render from Midjourney or Stable Diffusion and just make a commercial fully out of it. Usually it's like for concepting and development.
For concept, I think it helps quite a lot.
Yeah. I mean, we have some stuff where we've kind of used it sort of as map paintings, but it's sort of like ChatGPT. It only gets you like a certain of the way there, and then you still have to make it good or make it specific.
I'm not sure which AI program it is, but some of them do animations. I'm not sure what you feed into it, but it looks like really weird frame blending between them. But I think you can play with that and I bet you can get like a super interesting look out of it if you use it creatively.
I did a test on Instagram to kind of play with that, where I did like 3D and cell effects and then ran parts of it through that too, just to see what would happen. And I mean, I think it's also like depends the context. Like that, there was that Coke commercial that Keith Schofield did where they had some painting in the gallery museum that they just ran that part of it through Stable Diffusion, and it almost became more like a Photoshop filter in motion, which was
that's quite nice.
It was really nice.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a tool to be used. If you're a good artist good creative, then you'll use it in a way that'll be interesting.
Yeah, and I think also there is more than just like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. We've been using quite a lot in the studio, like to upscale to get better quality on thing. Even we ran a whole 3D project, was a low budget. Would cost us quite a lot to render the size we need, so we just render everything half size and upscale after, man. Save us a lot of time and cost. Yeah, so
I have to admit, my brother's getting married at the end of this. Well, coming to the UK to get married in like a month or so's time, and I'm going to use ChatGPT to try and do a bit of a speech.
Yeah, but I think of all it's all like little different tools. I think, I don't know, for me, cost effective, one thing it was this upscaling, using Topaz. We've been using, like just to get the quality, the upscale that is amazing. Even like slow motion, we were doing a job for Disney now, and they had like this 3D, and in the middle had like inside holding some edits they did, and the footage was like pretty shit, to be honest. I just ran all the footage through AI, made the footage a lot better, scaled that up, so we had a lot more control after. I think as a tool, remove the watermark. But I think as a tool, I think there is a lot of potential there. It's just how you use that.
I agree. You do have to have
it.
a skill. Like I don't think it's like sentient. It's not, which I don't think it will be for quite a while. Or ever. You still have to be able to know what to prompt or what tools to use. Like I noticed it's like art, like not the Midjourney stuff, but like the technical stuff, like, rotoing and runway or like remeshing in Cinema 4D, both using AI is amazing. Like, is someone that's going to get paid to roto going to lose out? Yes. But again, it's those like, it's like the more common it is, the less it's going to be needed with AI, it seems like.
Yeah, it's true.
I feel like using AI is not too different to being a director anyway. You're basically directing a program instead of a person. You're just being concise with your prompts.
Yeah. There is some controversy here. Well, I mean, I guess everywhere, but here, at least in LA right now, there was a, God, I'm going to get the name of it wrong, but there was a title sequence for a new Netflix show that they used Stable Diffusion for the whole thing. Like there was like, basically. And, they got torched on Twitter for sort of the obvious reasons.
But it's the beginning. Everyone always go against everything in the beginning, and
especially
like James said, it's not going anywhere. It's no point to fight against that. It's just how to embrace and how to use in your favor. I think that's what we need to do. There is a lot of potential there, but it's still early days. It's just moving really fast. That's quite scary.
Yeah, that's right. It's hard to keep up with it. You're kind of like, whoa. Also hard to know, like some of the tools I've noticed. Like I saw this post yesterday on like LinkedIn or Instagram of like basically turning Midjourney renders into 3D models, and you're like, oh, I want to do that. And then when I dug into it, I was like, oh, actually, it's sort of the beta that's not really there yet. Like, So there's a lot of that.
Give it a week, though. Give it a week.
Yeah, I know. I'll check back in 24 hours and report back.
It's
true.
There's a couple of questions on YouTube. Shall we ask those?
Sure.
Cool. Igor asks, looking at OG studios like Psyop and Buck at like an agency going beyond motion graphics, keep growing worldwide. Is growing that big something that interests you at all? What are your kind of like future plans for the studio?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something we talk about quite a bit as far as like the whole like the agency side, but it's really more like concept and strategy side of things. And we go back and forth. I think it just, I don't think I don't know what we're going to do there yet. It's like, but to be able to like holistically work with the concept and writing and strategy and the creative and production is always really enticing, because you can kind of keep the artistic integrity pretty good all the way through. But the challenge, we're interested always in pushing more towards that, but very cautiously, because it just becomes a really big management challenge, to both keep the quality up at that size, and also the work it takes to kind of grow that on the business side. Yeah.
There's another question, and I apologize if I pronounce the name wrong, but Siad asks, what should people be working on and focusing on to be an art director as awesome as you?
I'm a terrible art director, but I think I would say what I wish I would have known earlier on to be an art director or an art manager of any kind is it's certainly an eye and having a creative opinion and an outspoken vision. Of course, I think that's what we all think of art directors and creative directors to have. But I think the process of like putting together a clear, concise creative brief, pitch deck, of course, for that part of it, and then the act and behavior of like constant check-ins and creating sort of a plan and a roadmap so that the goal is really specific and clear for the artist you're working with is, I think, the key ingredient. And it wasn't something that I knew how to do for a very long time. It was sort of trial and error. And I wish someone had told me, where you're like, oh, I'll know it when I see it. Like, how much do we hate hearing that? Like, it's like, I mean, there is an element of like, and like, you know, it's like, hey, we're going to experiment. Let's take a week to experiment, but at least be clear about that. I think the communication part is something to really focus on, and if you want to be an art director and really sharpen it up.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because obviously we feel we focus on like visual communication. You know, visual communication is not the problem, but verbal communication can be tricky to get across what you want in a concise manner.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you something that's really interesting that we started to do, and we haven't mastered it fully yet. But so one of the biggest surprises that we found out over the pandemic is that clients are kind of scared of the animation process. And we were like, okay, well, why? And what we realized is because every animation process is quite a bit different, and they kind of never know what they're going to get when. And so we're like, okay, we're going to actually, as part of our pitch or our production, really plan the calendar and show you guys up front, like, this is not just design. We're doing look development. We're doing character design. You know, if it's cell animation, we're doing pose tests, and really guide them through the steps, and then remind them along the way, this is what we need you to look at and not look at, and kind of remind them over and over. So by the end of it, they're sick of it, hearing about it, and not scared, being like, is this going to get done? Yeah. That kind of a thing. And it really took a huge pressure off and let the creative get a bit better, because we were being so over communicative and specific, and we were more satisfied, they're more satisfied, and it made them more like kind of trust us more. And it's still the same art style in the end, but it got a lot less of like doing good creative, because they felt really a part of it. Even as far as to get us, I noticed particularly with cell animation, even as far as clients to, you know, getting us on the call with their client to kind of talk them through it, has come up a few times, and it helps.
That's nice, yeah.
With your roadmap, you have and doing, obviously cell animation is very, very intense and very like laborious work. So have you ever had any issues where, or how do you deal with issues if a client wants to change? I mean, because obviously they don't necessarily understand what's involved with cell animation and how monumental the smallest seeming change might be down the line.
Yeah, I think you just have to tell them. I think it's either a time and money thing, or just a time thing against the deadline that they probably don't have. But that's where, like, that's the hidden trap, because if you tell them when it's too late and we haven't explained that process, they're going to be like, well, yeah, why? Yeah. Like, you know, or it's not why, but they're going to be upset. But if you preempt it way earlier on, you know, even if it's CG or stop motion or whatever, then they'll sort of get and prioritize what to change earlier. Yeah. I mean, you still get those, like, that all said, there's still clients that show it to their client the day of delivery, and the client doesn't like it, and you're just like, guys, why?
That is so dejecting, isn't it? It's like, why did you wait until then?
Whoa. Sorry.
Yeah, I get their side of it. I totally do. It's just the nature of just so many cooks in the kitchen. But you're like, what person ever just says, yeah, great, after one look? Like, I don't know.
Sorry, yeah. I just forgot to turn the alarm off here and kick one. PJ, let me ask you, we're just hitting like 1 hour. Let me ask you something. What, you know, you just said to us, you've been 18 years, you know, as a studio, so you've been longer than on the industry. You comment about if he was art director, you know, just giving some tips, but as PJ, you know, the owner or founder, you know, if you could go back in time and tell yourself, you know, things you learned through the time to not making, like, say, a mistake or to make your life easy, what, you know, advices you'd give to yourself, you know, for young yourself?
I think it's kind of the same stuff we've been talking about, in the sense of like being proactive a lot earlier on, and like kind of not waiting for permission from clients to do cool creative, like make the stuff. You know who I actually learned this from was from James from Future Deluxe. He was giving a presentation in Sydney, and he was explaining, or maybe he said in person, I can't remember, but he basically was like, we made a bunch of stuff and always do and put it on Instagram, whether it was for clients or not, and then it would invite more clients to come in, was basically the essence of it. I wish I understood to do that earlier and not been sort of stuck with the sort of imposter syndrome sort of vibes. And because it really does invite a lot more. It invites a lot more work you want to do too, which is kind of like,
yeah,
shit.
true.
Like, so I wish I understood that sooner. Than I wish I understood the communication side a lot sooner. I sort of always thought people understood what we did or understood the nuances or the subjectivity, but clients really don't, and it's not their fault. Like it, you know, my version of cool or organic or fluid can mean a trillion different things. Yeah. So over communicating a lot earlier on, I wish I would have knew earlier. In kind of non-technical terms too, I would say.
I guess it worked both ways, isn't it? Because we don't really understand necessarily what the client is doing either, and what their day involves. So,
yeah, and it's like that was the one big thing over the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. That like I just assume everybody needs it spelled out really literally and really kind of directly, and that seems to be a universal truth that works pretty well to navigate and help sort of get cool stuff made.
Yeah. And where you see yourself in laundry in the next 5-10 years, man? What is the plans for the future? You know, you just open a new studio, you know, but you know, do you have any ambition? You know, you want to see you guys doing, I don't know, TV series, gaming, or what is challenging you out there then really motivate you to keep going?
Yeah, we're definitely playing around and developing, you know, IP and series stuff. That's a passion at the studio. We've been really excited to do more work in, well, we do a lot of it, but more work in gaming is something that we all kind of enjoy creating content for. And then also we do really like sort of the strategy mixed and motion branding stuff as well. It seems it's pretty popular in the studio as well. So that's where I think we'll kind of those areas where we'll keep kind of going. But you know, I think more than anything at its core, same as probably, you know, I know as you guys, is it's just we're still really excited about creative in general, and it's just like the more creativity we see at like off and stuff, the more we're like, yeah, let's go make some rad shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's nice. It's nice. It's still like the young spirit of a new studio, you know.
I totally feel like it, and then my like back hurts, and I'm just like, really?
That's great, man. It's really nice and inspiring to see that, you know. Because
there's a question on YouTube, but I feel like it's a bit of a difficult one to answer because there's no real answer for it. But Ziad asks, how many cell animators work on an average project? But it feels like, you know, it's how long a piece of string. I think it depends on the project and the creative solution.
Yeah, I mean, I would say at the very minimum, we just did kind of a pipeline breakdown of this. And it could be the same person, but I'd say at the very minimum, 5 or 6, and that would be on like the simpler side. But it's not really artist as much as it is the part of the process, from like post tests to character design to rough animation to cleanup to sort of comping it, and then the more complexity, you add more of each kind of. That seems to be somewhat of the breakdown.
Cool. So we just hitting one just past 1 hour, so we don't want to hold you really long.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
And but man, we always trying to end with a question. Do you want to ask, James?
Sure. I mean, now that you guys are 18-year-old, I guess it's kind of probably not okay in America, but it's okay in Europe. So if your studio was on Tinder looking for a date, how would you describe yourself to put yourself out there?
That's hilarious. The whole studio, let me sum it up.
Yeah, how you sell on Tinder for attract the clients.
What's your persona? Is it bubbly?
You know what it would be? It wouldn't even be a verbal description. It would be the animated GIF of the cat with the bandana riding the unicorn with lasers. That's how we would do.
You get a lot of people sliding into those DMs, I'm sure.
Yeah. It would just be complete creative, pop culture, embarrassing cats.
And with
have a good time.
All random with stable diffusion.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I can't think of a better way to finish a podcast.
Yeah.
I agree.
PJ, thanks so much,
yeah,
man. It's nice to see you. I hope to see you soon in Europe.
I know. Thank you guys so much. I had so much fun with you guys in London. I'm stoked to see you guys.
Yeah.
It's made my week.
Hope you come. Let's see if we can see each other in person soon. But thanks so much. It was a pleasure to know a little bit more. We do have the SNE Drink in London happening beginning of August. We're gonna confirm soon, and then of course we got another one. I think October, and that Christmas show December. That's the live show, and the end of every month we have the YouTube. We're gonna announce soon as well the next one.
This year's going so fast.
Just make sure, it's half a year gone. You know, it's done.
We've achieved more by now.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year, but thanks so much, man, to share and just to tell a little bit more about you and the studio to everyone. And
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Talk to you guys soon.
All right, take care.
Yes,
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
And,